Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, your guide to motorsports sponsorship. Here's your host, Josh Weesey.
Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by 4-Wheel Parts. Today, we are going to be hyper-focused on improving your business acumen. I've got 31 different terms prepped here that we're going to go through in detail. You need to know these terms. They're going to help you better understand and consequently better communicate with your business partners. I want you to start incorporating these terms into your sponsorship communication, into your pitches, things like that. I promise you're going to see an overall benefit. So it's a lot to cover in this episode. I wouldn't be surprised if you go back through and re-listen to this episode, take some notes. Some of these things you're going to know. You know, you've heard them before. Maybe you're already using them, but some of them you're not. And there's so much more. This is just a little snippet, things that I felt you needed to know. Before we get into the episode, though, I want to tell you a little bit about 4-Wheel Parts. As per the usual, they've got a lot of good deals going on right now. One of the things that I talked about on a previous episode, and I just want to highlight again here, is there's this 4-Wheel Parts Dixon limited edition flannel shirt that's out there. It's pretty cool. Now it is limited edition, and they have sold a ton of these things already. So if you want to pick one of these up, you better hop on it pretty quickly. I don't know how long they're going to last, but head over to their website, 4wheelparts.com, check that out. They got $500 off different tires and wheels. That's, Mickey Thompson, BF Goodrich, Toyo, Pro Comp. A bunch of different options there. And then same thing for bumpers and side steps. They're running a deal right now up to 20%. That's Smittybilt, Poison Spider, Rampage, Rugged Ridge. A lot of options out there. So if you're looking for a bumper right now, it might be time to check on this thing and see what kind of deals are going on. And then last but not least, I want to cover the new XRC Gen 3 winch from Smittybilt. Super cool. It's just, I don't know. I'm really excited with where winches are coming along nowadays. Like, they look really cool. The last winch that I had, it just had you want it on the front of your vehicle. You don't want to even hide it. And this one has different color options and stuff too. So, I don't know. I think they're really cool. I want the industry to continue this way. I'm a big person around industrial design and things like that. So I'm excited to see companies, like winch companies and Smittybilt incorporating that into their general business plan. Okay, so I have a couple of things I want to cover with you. I was actually recently featured, and I say recently, it was this week, on episode 89 of the Truck Show podcast. So Sean Holman has been on this show before. He's from the Truck Show podcast, and he works for Motor Trend. And he asked me to come on that show and talk a little bit about my day job, which is at Eaton Proving Grounds in Marshall, Michigan. It was a lot of fun, a really cool episode. It is out there. I encourage you to check it out. I think that my segment starts around, the 20-minute mark for the timestamp. And it was maybe like 40 minutes or so that I was able to talk about the Proving Grounds and what we do there. So I highly encourage you to check that out, especially if you want to know a little bit more about Eaton and what they offer. Different differentials, valve train components, superchargers, transmissions, a bunch of stuff. So we talk a little bit about that stuff. And speaking of that too, I will be with the Eaton team at SEMA this year. Really excited. It's the first time I will have the opportunity to go to SEMA, and I am pumped about it. So I'm going to be there for a couple of days. I won't be there the whole time, but if you're at SEMA and you get a chance, swing by the Eaton booth, and you might be able to connect with me. And if not, you can see what they have to offer and connect with some of the team there. And I did get a new toy recently. So last week, I guess, I picked up a 2017 Ford Raptor, which is honestly my dream truck. I had the Jeep, and I loved the Jeep. An opportunity came up for me to snag a Raptor, and I just hopped on it. So I don't have the Jeep anymore, but yeah, I love this truck so far. I got a little bit of a test run off-road a couple days ago, and I'm very happy with it. A little bit of high speed, a little bit of low speed stuff, but it was so far I'm very impressed. I get a little bit bigger test this weekend. I'm going to Silver Lake Sand Dunes. I've been going to the Silver Lake Sand Dunes since I was 7 years old, and I've been there with a bunch of different types of vehicles. This is probably the one I'm most excited about, though. So I'm going there. It's October 9th, and I'm recording this intro here, and this time of year the dunes are really peaked and they're pretty rough, so it's going to be a real test. We'll see. I could get stuck, and that's okay. That's part of the game, but I'm really excited to get out there and try it out. So if you want to know more about the Raptor, you can follow my Instagram account. Right now it's called Destination Raptor. It used to be called Destination JLU, so I don't know if I'll change that in the future, but you can head over to Instagram and kind of follow some of my adventures there. All right, I would love to get your feedback about the show. That's one of the best ways I can continue to bring awesome guests on and continue to produce the show. So head over to Apple Podcasts and leave that rating review. That would be awesome. And then subscribe, regardless of whatever podcast player you use. There's a ton of different options out there. Go ahead and hit subscribe. Even if you're using the website to listen to the show, I highly recommend trying to find it on Apple Podcasts or Google Play or something like that, and subscribing. That way the shows will just automatically download to your phone. It's much easier, honestly. But if not, keep going to that website. I do track website visits, so that's all good too. I do report all that stuff out to my sponsors. This episode here, speaking of sponsors, is brought to you by several other awesome companies. AMSOIL, they provide amazing lubrication products, and they are a company that runs on freedom. You can find out more at amsoil.com/rider. SolderWeld, they produce game-changing metal bonding technology, and they're ready to rescue your race. TopThePodium.com, they're experts in motorsports sponsorship and website creation, and they do resumes, so hit them up for that. Bold Racing, they're a family desert UTV race team, and they've been with us for so long now, it's crazy. Crash Act Industries, they provide human protection and extreme racing products. I also want to shout out some of our other partners, MBRP, HMK USA, Studboy Traction, and High Octane Coffee. And speaking of High Octane Coffee, we have the High Octane Coffee marketing tune-up next, where Joe Sylvester gives you a little bit of a tidbit on sponsorship advice, things that you should be paying attention to and doing in your program. You can find Joe at Joe Sylvester 8 or at High Octane Coffee. All right, that's it. Let's hit it.
What's up, everybody? Joe Sylvester here with your High Octane Coffee marketing tune-up of the day. Today I want to talk about a little bit of homework. Doing your homework on a company before you even think about approaching them for a sponsorship. That's a big, big thing. You need to understand the company and a little bit about what they're all about and what their marketing strategies and tactics are before you even approach them. Make sure that they align with what you're doing and make sure that you're going to be able to bring something to the table for them. Check up on their social media, look at maybe who else they're sponsoring, see how you fit into the picture, and absolutely use their product. Even if you just try it for the first time, make sure it's something that you believe in, something that you feel confident in endorsing. So definitely, before approaching a company, do your homework, research that company, and learn as much as you possibly can about them so you can have an intelligent conversation with them when you finally do reach that marketing executive to talk to them about sponsoring your race program.
All right, I'm excited to get into the main content of the show. I really wanted to dig in to different terms that you need to know. There's so many out there. There's so many different financial acumen terms that it's a bit overwhelming. So I was trying to break that list down a little bit smaller to things that I think are going to add the most value for you when you're having conversations with your sponsors or making pitches, things like that. So I pulled out 31 different terms I want to talk through. And I'm going to give you just kind of a high level overview of, kind of 4 sections that these terms fit in for me, and just a brief definition of each one. So the 4 sections I broke it down into is, basically the simplest one is programs. The way you talk about your programs. Probably the deepest, most complicated one is the marketing segment, and that's actually maybe even the most valuable one. Then there's a digital marketing segment, and then just general business terms. So roughly those 4 sections. I'll take a break at some point and go through our sponsors, thank our sponsors for the show, and then come right back into the remaining terms. So I'll get right into this part here. I specifically broke out this simple program section because I think even using the term program makes yourself sound a little bit more serious and professional about what you're doing. I'm thinking of like the grassroots racers and the weekend warriors that might just say, yeah, like I race on the weekends. What I want you to change that term to is, hey, my racing program, or my influencer program, my sponsorship program, my partnership program. I think that phrasing it that way adds a little bit more credibility. And I honestly think it makes what you're doing sound a little more serious. That's fine if you're just a weekend warrior, if you race 2-3 times a year. That's your racing program. It's just a smaller program in comparison to some other ones. So I highly recommend right off the bat, start using some of those things. Racing program, influencer program, sponsorship program, partnership program, whatever it is. It's just that nice little touch. Adds a little bit of professionalism to what you're doing. It makes it feel a little bigger. So I highly, highly, highly recommend that one little tweak. I think you'll feel more confident with that one change alone. Okay, so that's the one I wanted to kick things off with. Definitely the simplest one. This next section is probably the most in-depth one and the most complicated overall. So I'm going to hit that now, and then right after that, I'll take a quick break. So the marketing segment here, I want to start off with probably one of the most important terms in this segment, target market. Sometimes people refer to this as segmentation. Think about if you're trying to target something, whatever it is, you're honing in on it. You're trying to narrow down what it means. And that's what target market is all about. Almost every company has a set of people that are most likely going to buy or consume their products. You want to help sponsors identify who these people are, and that's why they're reaching out to you. They're targeting your audience. So if you are a UTV racer, people who follow you are very interested in UTV racing. And if there's a company that specifically wants to market to UTV racers, that's their target market. They come to you, and you can help them segment their campaign. And you can, I'm adding words even as I go, like campaign's a good word too. But like you help them break down the entire population into these little segments and these little target markets. So that's the two terms I really want to talk about and kick this thing off with is target market and segmentation. I think if you start using those terms when you're talking to someone, like, hey, here's the market that I target right now, because you might not even know it. You're doing this with your program. You are targeting certain people with your social media. For me, for example, I have my separate Instagram page that's just off-roading focused for, it was my Jeep and now it's my Raptor. That is a target market. There's only a certain number of people that are going to be interested in following that page. So either way, I think you should incorporate those two terms there. And I think that's going to make a big difference right off the bat. Now, an extension of that, another term is demographics. These are probably more common terms than, demographics, but it basically just means kind of related to the segmentation. What are the different age, gender, these different characteristics that are part of your target market. It's basically a way to define your target market. Instagram, for example, they have some business analytics tools that tell you, I think they call them insights. They tell you exactly who is part of your target market, essentially. So they're saying if you post something, here's the people that are paying attention to it. So typical ones are age, gender, location. Those are probably the most popular ones. And you could share that with a sponsor, like, hey, I have the people who engage most with my content are from Las Vegas. They're male and their ages 22 to 32. You could share that with them, and it helps them better understand, like, are you the right person for their target market? So demographics is a key term. You use that term when you're talking to sponsors about this stuff, and I think it just helps streamline communication. maybe one of the more obvious terms, but I think is important, is branding. You can talk about this in reference to, like, say if you have a website, you say, hey, the branding on my website aligns very closely with the branding on your website. So that might mean colors, overall style, the way the fonts are set up, the message that's being communicated. It's basically the way people feel when they look at your content. Same thing goes for brand awareness, which is another term. So this is talking about what is the general feeling, how many people know about the brand, how do they feel when they hear about the brand. So those two terms are pretty synonymous, but just using them in that way, like saying brand awareness versus like, oh, here's what your stuff looks like. I think it's just a little bit more streamlined for communication. You'll probably hear me say streamlined a lot today too, because that's what this is about. It's about streamlining your communication with your sponsors so that what you're saying is understood by them in the most concise way possible. Next thing here, it's kind of a shortened term, but MarCom. So it stands for marketing communications. But when you're talking with a lot of marketers, they'll say that. They'll say MarCom. A lot of big companies, they have MarCom people within their company. But yeah, that's all it is, marketing communications. So a lot of what we're talking about right here is part of like what a MarCom program would be. If people are doing public relations, PR type stuff, it might be in there. MarCom, it's just another way of saying it. This is a different one. I don't think many folks have heard this, but there's something called a funnel. Some people call it sales funnel, some people call it click funnel, especially in the digital world. But essentially a funnel is a way of, picture actually the shape of a funnel. It's a way of taking everybody that could potentially be a customer, and you're basically getting them closer and closer to a sale. If it's on, say, a website, let's say you have a social media post, and then that has a link to it to go to a sales page, and then you go to that sales page, and then at some point they got to find like the product and then add it to their cart. That you're getting closer and closer to the bottom of that funnel, and at one point they have to actually put in their credit card information and hit go. So not until they hit go is the sale complete. So everything up until that point is a funnel. And as a brand ambassador or an influencer, you are part of the sales funnel. So you're usually very early on in that sales funnel. You might be the person posting a link, or you might be the person just promoting a brand, but either way, you're part of that sales funnel. So I think if you talk about that with folks, they know you're serious. Now this next term here, I already used it on accident. I use it quite a bit, is analytics. So if you're talking to a sponsor about, your audience or the insights from your social media, or the way that your business operates, you can use the term analytics. It's basically like the data that you use to make decisions about your program. Companies use this term as well, so you can, talk to them that way and say, like, oh, this might help you with your business analytics. It's a cool little term. Conversion rate. That's the next term I want to talk about. This is basically the rate at which people visiting a website complete the final goal. So like for me, I want people to download the show. That if I can figure out how many people visit, how many people download, I can figure out my conversion rate. Most companies are going to look for that sale, that final sale. So similar to what I talked to with the funnel, the rate at which someone successfully completes whatever it was the company wanted, that's a conversion rate. Typically it's thought of in terms of sales. Another term that I actually just learned recently that I wanted to kind of expound on, I'm using big words today, expound, is organic integration. Companies will use this to describe when a brand ambassador is like having a product be part of their day-to-day lives. It looks natural. It feels natural. When they're doing content creation, this item is just like part of what they do. It's not a focus item. It's just there. It looks natural. If you think of like product placement in movies and stuff, the really good product placements, you barely even know they're there, but you get it. I mean, One of my favorite examples is from the show sitcom Seinfeld. There was always a Post cereal box in their scenes when they were in, I think it was Jerry's apartment. So it was super random, and they would just pour themselves some cereal, but it was Post cereal. It's pretty cool. And I actually used to work for Post cereal, which is pretty funny. Maybe that's why I noticed it, but either way, organic integration. Next one is lead gen. Now, lead gen is short for lead generation, and companies will use this, and a lot of times when they're talking about lead gen, they're talking about getting emails. But essentially it means getting and gathering information so that customers can be retargeted later. So sometimes people will do it on websites or with social media ads. They'll have, like Facebook, for example, has a pixel that you can implant within a website, and that gathers information from people who visit that website from Facebook, and then you can retarget them in an ad campaign later on. So that's one way of lead gen, is you're getting a digital marker about who visited a website, and you can target them with an ad later. But probably the most common reference that I hear is to email marketing. So you're creating some way, shape, or form of getting somebody's email. A lot of folks do this at trade shows where they're doing like a giveaway for something, and they will ask for your email, maybe a little survey, and then later on you might win whatever that prize was. But if not, they definitely won by getting your email address, and they can send you email marketing stuff later. And that's actually another term I want to talk about, email marketing. I kind of just described it, but it's just a way for people to get a very targeted message to an audience. So if you got somebody's email, you can send them a message. They usually has a higher percentage rate of, opens or views than, normal social media post. So that's something I wanted to hit on. Next thing here, it's actually two terms I'm going to talk about at the same time: penetration versus development. So this is in terms of like marketing penetration, marketing development. If you hear someone talk about marketing development, they're typically saying they're entering a new market or creating a new market, something that maybe didn't previously exist. So maybe it's a new product that didn't exist before, but they're entering some new market. Some people will talk about that with, if they're typically a United States company and they want to start developing in Japan, they might say, we have a market development campaign in Japan. It's opening up. Penetration, however, is going deeper into a market. So let's say that same company is looking at the United States market and saying, we want to go deeper and deeper into this market. We want to, expand our offering in this specific market. Then they might say market penetration. So two terms, kind of want to talk about them at the same time. Content marketing is another one. And then influencer marketing. I'll talk about these at the same time too, because they're fairly similar. Both of them, I've already used them in this episode. It's so natural to me using these two terms that I kind of forget about it now. But content marketing is basically like the cool images, the cool videos, the cool visuals that companies create, influencers create, you create, and companies can use to build their brand. So it's pretty obvious when you think about it, but just even using that term content marketing, I think adds some credibility. And then influencer marketing, that is probably the best way to describe what it is that you all do. If you're a racer, or someone who is, a weekend warrior that's promoting a brand, you are an influencer marketer. And businesses will actually have their own separate influencer marketing budget sometimes, and you're part of that budget. That's where it falls. So that's the end of that marketing segment. I wanted to hit those terms pretty hard. Lots of good stuff there. Now I'm going to take a quick minute to thank the sponsors for this podcast, and I'll come back to the next two segments.
Let's talk about your truck for a minute. You can count on it to haul your vehicle and your gear to the track or to the trailhead, but I bet you never think about the motor oil. Here's why you should. Your oil is the only thing preventing your engine from wearing out and breaking down. To keep your truck running strong, look for an oil with added wear protection. Like, for example, AMSOIL Signature Series Synthetic Motor Oil. It delivers 75% more engine protection against horsepower loss and wear than is required by the leading industry standard. It provides the next level protection today's demanding engines need to keep running for years and to keep effortlessly towing your ride to the track. Go to AMSOIL.com/rider to find out more. Make the switch to AMSOIL Synthetic Motor Oil today to keep your vehicle running great.
Hey guys, George Hamill here to talk about SolderWeld's new off-road repair kit. If you're a racer of any type or an off-road enthusiast like myself, you're going to want to take a close look at this product that bonds metal on the spot. SolderWeld has combined some of their most elite products into one small kit that fits perfectly under your seat or strapped to a roll cage and allows you to make some insane fixes anywhere you go. How many of us have been in a race or out on the trail and got a rock chip in a radiator or brake line? We have seen a top-tier desert race team at the 2019 Min 400 taken out by a simple rock to the radiator. If they had an off-road repair kit on board, they could have been back up and running in just minutes. The kit includes everything you need to work on dirty aluminum, stainless steel, copper, and many other metals. SolderWeld's cutting-edge technology allows you to make these fixes with extremely low heat and incredibly high tensile strength, leaving you a lasting fix every time. Don't be that guy broke down on the side of the trail. Get your off-road repair kit today, and your friends will thank you.
When I stop to think about all the things that make motorsports awesome, I think of camaraderie, I think of speed, I think of friendship, and I also think of family. And it's hard to go through all of those elements without thinking of Bold Racing. Now, Bold Racing and Jimmy Moore, the owner, has been a long-time supporter of this show and Impact Fuel overall. Jimmy Moore is a desert racer that also has a ton of experience with suspension, UTV axles, and general go-fastness. I would love for you to head over to their Facebook page, Bold Racing, or their Instagram page, bold.racing, and just show them some love. Let them know that you support their race program and you want to see them continue to promote the amazing elements of motorsports. Safety is our overriding priority. I hear it all the time, but I have to ask myself, is it though? Is that the first thing we think of? Is that the first thing you think of? Over the past couple of years, we've seen the performance of production UTVs increase, somewhere around 350%. That means these machines give us a lot more opportunity to have fun and win races, but it also, unfortunately, gives us new opportunities to crash. And that's why we have partnered with Crash Addict Industries. The owner, Travis Pointer, became very accustomed to crashing early in his career. He saw it as inevitable, and he set out to make the process safer. With a passion for racing, welding, and engineering, Crash Addict Industries now produces full cage and other protection systems intentionally designed to protect you during an accident on the track. They also offer a line of human protection products through their vendors. Do this for me at this point. If you're racing with a stock cage right now, please go check out CrashAddict.com and at least see what they have to offer. Even if you choose to go with a different company, please make safety your overriding priority. 2 questions I get continuously about this show and about sponsorship is, do I need my own website and do I need a resume? The answer is, in my opinion, yes to both, and that's why we partner with TopThePodium.com. Now, if you want to see an example of what a professional website and what a professional resume looks like, you gotta check out TopThePodium.com. They did my website. The Sponsored Rider Club Podcast website is SponsoredRiderClubPodcast.com. That was created by Jeff Vanistall of TopThePodium.com. I think it's awesome. I get a lot of good feedback about it. And there's a number of other websites out there that Jeff has produced that are just phenomenal. So I think it's important in this world of social media where you have control of your content That's what a website does. It gives you full control. We don't know what Facebook's going to do sometimes. We don't know what Instagram's going to do. We don't know what Twitter's going to do. So if we don't have that central location to direct people and house our content, there is some risk that we incur. So I strongly recommend getting a website, talking to topthepodium.com. And then the resume, again, is massive. And if you want to stand out, get it done professionally. And honestly, it is one of the best ways to step up your game and present yourself in the best way possible.
Welcome back. It is time to round up this episode here. Got 2 more sections to cover. Let's hit it. First one is digital marketing. Now, this could have been a term in itself, but essentially it just means social media. It means websites, anything that people are playing with in a digital space. And the first one I wanted to talk to, it's kind of a little bit different take on the conversion rate that we talked about earlier, but cost per click. Cost per click is basically when someone is making a decision to click on something, whether it's from an ad or from something else, that at some point there's a cost associated with making a post or making a link. And this is basically saying, what does it cost you? So if you're running an ad, and let's say the ad is $10 a day, and you get 10 clicks in that day, you could basically say I had $1 per click. That was my cost per click. So people talk about that, especially in the social media marketing world. If you understand what cost per click is, maybe you can come up with a little bit lower cost per click for some of your stuff. So that's an option. The next one is bounce rate. So bounce rate is essentially if someone is maybe clicks through something and they get to a website page and then they just hop right off. They don't do anything with that. That's bounce rate. So that's something that companies might look at for a website to see, like, well, what's happened with my landing page? Shoot, landing page is a term in itself. What's happening with the people when they get to the page that I send them to on a website. So if I have a link, I send them to a page, that's where they land at. Like, what do they do with that information? If they just leave right away, then something is wrong with that landing page. The bounce rate is going to be horrible. They're going to want to make some tweaks. So bounce rate is another one. The next one, I even just started mentioning it by accident, is click-through rate. So that's basically if you have some sort of ad or a post or something, and you can figure out what's the rate at which people are clicking this and then actually taking some action from that point, click through. If you ignore it altogether, you have a really low click through rate. Or if there's like a series of clicks that you want people to make and they're not making that, then you're going to have a low click through rate. But if you see people going all the way through that funnel, which I talked about earlier, the marketing funnel, if you see people going all the way through that funnel, you're going to have a high click through rate because they're basically doing the things that you want them to do in the digital space. Next one is probably more common for people to hear. It's reach. So this is big in social media space. If you put out a post, you can generally understand how big your reach is. And that's what people are talking about. Like, how many people did you get to? Now, they might not have taken action on it. They may not have clicked on it. How many people did you get to? Sometimes people refer to impressions as well. How many people viewed an image, a post, a video, and it got in front of them. It got in front of some eyeballs. That's another way of kind of looking at it. So reach might be how far that expands. Impressions can be, how many people really saw it. Now, they might not have done anything with it, but how many saw it? So there's elements of this where if you go back to that funnel thing, a lot of what we're talking about is kind of going to relate to that funnel I talked about earlier. If you have an impression, that means something is happening from a brand awareness standpoint. People are getting some visibility to the brand. And then if they start going further and further down that funnel, you start getting more specific with which terms you're using. So you might end up getting to a conversion, which is conversion rate, converting to sales later on at the bottom of that funnel. But at first, higher up, you're talking about impressions. Another one, which is kind of similar, is the engagement rate. So if you're thinking about social media, for example, let's say you put up a post and you get 1,000 people like this post. that means people are engaging with your post. They're actually doing something with it. Now, they're not clicking through in this case. You're not measuring that. They're not making a sale right there, but they're acknowledging that they enjoyed whatever post it was that you put up. And you can tie that to an engagement rate. You can figure out like how often do people actually do something with my post. So typically it's liking in some way, shape, or form. I know Facebook has, the thumbs up. It has the angry sign, the love sign, all these different ones. That's an engagement. And then comments. Comments are typically viewed as engagements as well. So those are things you can kind of factor in. You can measure it if you want. Going back to that business analytics, you could actually measure all that stuff and report it out to sponsors. It can be part of your pitch. The last comment I want to make on this section is about evergreen content. So if you hear that term, evergreen content, what people are referring to is like content that's more or less timeless. So I produce some of these shows that are, pretty much evergreen. They're generic enough that 20, 30 years later, they'll probably still add some value. Some other ones, not so much. So if I talk very specifically about like a trend on social media right now, maybe that's valid for a year, 2 years, probably less than that, honestly. That is not evergreen. If I talk about relationship building, and even some of these terms like branding, right? That's probably pretty timeless. That's pretty evergreen. So for example, this podcast, the way I produce it, I put up everything with a no expiration date. It's basically going to be up and available as long as I want it to be. Or as long as I'm paying for the service to continue to publish the shows and make them available. To an extent, that alone makes things relatively evergreen. But like I said, individual episodes might not be. So if you post something or you create something in the content world that can be timeless and that you can reuse 10 years later or something like that, it's likely evergreen content. So just talking about those sorts of things are, I think they're valuable. Okay, so that kind of rounds out the digital marketing segment. The last segment I want to comment on here is probably the most generic one in the whole thing, and that's just general business. Some of the higher level terms, and that we've actually covered some of these, but I do think that incorporating these terms into the way you communicate is going to add some credibility. The first one here is acumen. So I've even used this already in the show, I think. Acumen is just about the type of words you use. That's really what we're trying to build in this show. Some folks will say like financial acumen or business acumen, marketing acumen. It's really just how you speak the language. But even just using the term acumen, I think, gets you speaking the language. The next one is ROI, return on investment. Now, this is one we've covered pretty heavy in this show. If this is your first time listening to the show, maybe this is a new term, but for the most part, folks have learned this. But I can't do a show on, financial acumen without talking about ROI, return on investment. Usually, if you say the term ROI as an acronym, people are going to know what you're talking about. But return on investment just means if a company is spending money, investing into something else, what do they get back? Some people use return on sales, so based off of what their sales number is, or just return on an individual investment. So if I give you $100 for you to do some sort of influencer campaign, I'm going to expect a certain percentage of that as a return later on, typically in more sales. So if I give you $100, and you produce $200 of additional income for me, like I got a really positive return on investment. Now, if I give you $100 and I get $0 in sales, I'm in the hole $100. So that's not a good return on investment. All right, next two terms here. I've actually written about these and I've talked about them quite a bit. Endemic versus non-endemic sponsorship. So endemic just means internal to the industry that you're in. So a lot of cases, in this, it's motorsports. We're talking about, this is a motorsports marketing and sponsorship show. So we're talking about companies that are going to be marketing to, folks buying tires, engine components, suspension components, things like that. That's endemic. Non-endemic would be where you start bringing in brands that aren't specific to motorsports. If you have a furniture company that you're marketing, or a big box company that's for home improvement, beverages, different types of things like that. Those are non-endemic sponsors. And frankly, there's a lot more non-endemic sponsors out there than there would be endemic. So I like to encourage folks to bring a little bit more of that into the industry if possible, because that helps us grow too. Ad spend, super simple term, but that's what companies are doing. They're comparing giving money to you versus just general ad spend. That's advertising money. That's all it is. But a lot of folks refer to it as ad spend. Even I do it without even thinking about it. That's the terms that I use. Forecasting, another simple term, but if you can talk to somebody using the term forecasting, which is basically just saying, hey, how's the business going to perform in the future? What type of sales you're looking at? What type of markets are you going to be targeting in the future? It's about forecasting where the business is going to be at. So simple term, but very important. And the last term that I want to talk about, it's an acronym, KPI, Key Performance Indicator. Another way of talking about this is metrics. I do encourage folks to have a list of their KPIs, their key performance indicators, or their metrics, and share that with your sponsors. It could be engagement rate, it could be number of followers that you have. It could be, if you have a link that you have that people will, say your sponsor gave it to you, you post it up and the sponsor can see how many clicks you have. That could be a KPI for you, is how many clicks you have for that link. Or if you have a promotional code, you can see how many people use that promotional code. All these things could be different key performance indicators that you could use to track how well you are performing in relation to your sponsor's expectations. So that is really it. I mean, I started this thing off with 31 terms. I may have added a few ones in there, but really I wanted to just give you a snippet of, ammo that you can use to better improve your acumen overall. If you ever have questions about stuff like this, go ahead and shoot me an email, josh@sponsoredriderclubpodcast.com, or hit me up on social media, any one of the social media platforms, shoot me a DM. But that's it. I'm going to close things out today. Have fun and ride safe. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club Podcast, which is powered by 4Wheel Parts. I want you to make sure that you are subscribed to this show, whether it's on iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss upcoming guests and upcoming episodes. And then follow us on social media. We're on all of the platforms. You can find out the most content, though, on our Facebook page. That's where we do our live videos. To get some insider access to upcoming guests, you can also check out the Sponsored Rider Club on Facebook. It is a support network where you can ask questions about best practices and get feedback from our audience. A special thanks goes out to our sponsors, 4Wheel Parts, AMSOIL, SolderWeld, Bold Racing, TopThePodium.com, and Crash Addict Industries. And I also want to shout out some of our other partners, MBRP, HMK USA, Sudboy Traction, and High Octane Coffee. I look forward to serving you again next week. Until then, have fun and ride safe.